Hey guys, today's video is going to be a short one, but I want to talk to you about metrics in debate, weighing metrics specifically. A little bit of recap, if you don't know what weighing is saying why one side's argument or idea is stronger or more important than another side's argument or idea. So you're just weighing the strength of the arguments on both sides and saying why one is stronger than the other. But when you weigh, you need to say how or why one side's arguments are stronger than the other. And the way that you say how one side's arguments are stronger is by using something called metrics. A metric is a way for us to measure how much more important or how much stronger one side's arguments are. And there are a lot of metrics that you could use in debate, and I want to go through all of those metrics and explain what each of those metrics are and maybe give an example for those metrics. So let me list them out for you. Vulnerability, scale, intensity, principle, logical priority, long-term versus short-term, reversibility, likelihood, and more. These are all possible metrics that you can use to weigh in a debate. I'm going to go through each of them in that order. So first, let's talk about vulnerability. The metric of vulnerability is just saying that your argument helps more vulnerable people than their argument. So if the stakeholders that your argument and that your side are standing for are more vulnerable than the stakeholders that opposition is standing up for, or if you are more effective in helping those stakeholders, those actors, then you have the metric of vulnerability. So for example, if proposition's arguments help poor students, but opposition's arguments help rich students, because you have the metric of vulnerability, you deserve to win that argument. Second metric, scale. There are other words to say the word scale. You could say scope, you could say quantity, you could say number, you could say size, but I like to use the word scale. Scale just means that your arguments, your ideas, are larger in terms of the number of things or the number of people, or just like the largeness of the impact around the world. So if you affect more actors with your side of the motion, with your arguments, then you have more scale than the other side, right? For example, if you were doing this house would ban smoking, maybe you would have scale on proposition, because now by banning smoking, everyone who has to be affected by the smoke in the streets, everyone who has to pay for the medical attention of those who get sick, all of those people are affected in a better way. So you have a larger scale than the opposition. The next metric is intensity. But other words to describe the word intensity are quality or delta. Basically, intensity is how strong the impact is per actor. It's not talking about the amount of people you affect, it's talking about how much you affect each person. So for example, if you were to ban hate speech off the internet, if that was the motion, by banning hate speech, the intensity of how much you affect each person that is vulnerable, maybe minorities, maybe racial, sexual minorities, the impact on each of those people not having to look at hate speech is greater. It's a very intense impact. And that's why you might win on the metric of intensity. Whereas the other side might have a larger scale because of the intensity of your impact, because it's more concentrated, your argument is stronger. The next metric is principle. So the principle metric is on the morality of your side or of your argument, whether it's right or wrong. So for example, for the motion, this house would ban zoos. If you're banning zoos, you can weigh against the other side and their arguments by saying that you have the more principled side. you have the more ethically just side. Yes, by banning zoos, maybe we lose on the revenue of zoos, maybe we lose on certain possible benefits on a practical sense, but on a principle sense, because we are no longer harming animals, we win on an ethical framing. So on an ethical metric. The next metric is a very complicated one, but I'll try to make it simple. It's logical priority. The metric of logical priority is talking about which side's arguments need to happen first before the other side. For example, there's a lot of debates about one side saying that they need to focus on the economy, and then the other side saying that they need to focus on climate change. But the side that's focusing on climate change could say that in order to have a good economy, you need to face less of the effects of climate change, because climate change could cause storms that hurt your economy. So the logical priority is that the priority is climate change first and then the economy. Of course, the side that is standing for the economy could say, no. You need money to fix climate change. So you need to focus on the economy first and then climate change. So this is the metric of logical priority, which comes first in terms of the priority of what needs to happen. So that is the metric of logical priority. Of course, the side that's standing for the economy could say, whoa, wait. You need money to solve climate change. So the economy should come first. The economy should have logical priority over climate change. So both sides can try to win on the metric of logical priority. Another very common metric is long-term versus short-term. Another word for long-term is sustainability, and another word for short-term is urgency. So one side might have the argument where you have better long-term effects, whereas the other side might have an argument where they have better short-term effects. This is also very similar to the economy versus climate change debate, where the urgent thing might be that we really need to fix the economy so that people don't go hungry. But then the people on the side of climate change activism might say, wait. We need to think about the long term, because yes, even though the short term matters, if we don't care about the long term, we're gonna have a very bad future. So this is the metric of long term versus short term. One side might say, well, we have the short term and that's why we win. We have urgency. Whereas the other side might say, we have the long term. We have sustainability and that's why we win. Next metric is on reversibility. The metric of reversibility is talking about how you need to stop this from happening because the impacts of the thing happening are irreversible and they cannot be undone. For example, you could have a debate motion about whether we need to fund the war in Ukraine. And the reversibility of possibly if Ukraine lost a lot of land, maybe it would be irreversible to get that land back. So the side that is advocating for more money being sent to the war could talk about reversibility as one of their metrics. Because if they lose the conflict or lose a lot of land, that effect is probably irreversible. The last metric I want to talk about is likelihood. And likelihood can be said in other ways, such as certainty or plausibility. But basically, likelihood is about whether the impacts that you want from your side of the motion are more likely or less likely to happen than the other side. Does your policy or does your idea have more likelihood to actually manifest, to actually have the impacts that you want? An example of likelihood would be the motion, this house would share company profits to its employees. Which side has more likelihood to create incentives for people to work? Would it be to share the profits from the company to the employees? Or maybe the opposition would talk about bonuses and how bonuses would help people have more incentive to work harder. Would it be sharing profits on an egalitarian way to everyone in the company, or would it be in giving bonuses for performance? Which one is more likely to create the incentive to work harder? So that is the metric of likelihood. So what did we go over? We went over all of these metrics: vulnerability, scale, quantity, principle, logical priority, short-term versus long-term, reversibility, and likelihood. These are the metrics you will most likely find in debates. And these are the metrics that you will use to explain why your side wins over the other side. By the way, metrics can come out in the constructive speeches, but they are mostly focused on in the third and the reply speech. So the third speaker, if you are a whip speaker, you really want to know what these metrics are and how you can use them to explain the difference between the sides. Because all metrics are doing are measuring the difference between the two sides and why one side is better than the other side. So try to use these metrics and try to say these metrics in your speeches. Like when you say the word scale, we win on the metric of scale, or we win on the metric of logical priority. Judges love when you use these words to explain the difference in the debate. They love it when you can explain these differences in very simple ways. Or when you say, we win because our impacts have greater intensity. Or when you say, we win because we address the more vulnerable stakeholders and have the metric of vulnerability. Or when you say, we win because we have the metric of likelihood and they don't have as much likelihood as we do. These are really very simple and fun ways of explaining how the debate went and why you win. So yeah, that is metrics in a large nutshell. I said I'd make a short video, but it's not that short, but I think I underestimated how much there is to talk about when it comes to metrics. I think there's so much to talk about when it comes to metrics because there are so many possibilities and because metrics are so important in debates. They really, really, really help you win debates in a very simple way. Yeah, that's all from me today, and I hope you start using metrics in your debates. And I'll see you next time.